If you were counting on Apple's supply chain shakeup to keep the iPhone 18 Pro price from going up, the newest leak paints a pretty clear picture. It's probably not happening. Apple may be exploring Chinese memory suppliers like CXMT, but the iPhone 18 Pro and iPhone 18 Pro Max are reportedly locked into Samsung and SK Hynix DRAM for this generation. And the reason isn't politics, and it isn't trust. It's packaging, and yes, something as boring as chip packaging could be one of the biggest reasons the iPhone 18 Pro could see a noticeable price hike in 2026. Here's what's going on. Apple's A20 Pro chip expected to power the iPhone 18 Pro lineup is rumored to be moving to a new memory layout called wafer-level multi-chip module packaging, or WMCM. That's a major change because it alters how the DRAM is integrated with the processor. In the more familiar setup used widely in phones, memory is often stacked in a package-on-package design, where the DRAM sits on top of the application processor. It's compact, it's established, and many suppliers can support it. But WMCM shifts the DRAM from being stacked on top of the chip to sitting next to it. That might sound like a small rearrangement, but it changes the entire coordination process between Apple's silicon team and the memory supplier. With WMCM, the memory and processor integration becomes far more tightly engineered. Signal integrity, power delivery, thermal behavior, and manufacturing tolerances all get more complicated. And the critical part is validation. The memory modules have to pass Apple's qualification, process in the exact configuration Apple plans to ship at the exact performance targets Apple requires within a strict timeline. Samsung and SK Hynix have a massive advantage here because they've been working with Apple on memory integration for years. They already have the working relationship, the tooling, and the operational experience to move fast when Apple changes the playbook. EXMT doesn't. CXMT, China's memory maker that Apple has reportedly been testing, may be improving quickly. But the leak suggests it's still early in that supplier relationship, and its current testing footprint is mainly tied to devices sold inside China. That's a very different path from being approved to ship DRAM inside Apple's next global flagship iPhone Pro models at scale with Apple's newest packaging method, in time for a September launch, and that timing is the key. If the iPhone 18 Pro is still expected to launch in September, there's simply not enough runway left for CXMT to clear validation for this specific WMCM-based A20 Pro configuration. Even if the chips are good, the integration and qualification process takes time, months of it, because Apple can't afford memory instability in a product that ships in the tens of millions. So what does that mean in plain English? It means the iPhone 18 Pro memory supply is likely staying with the suppliers that can support WMCM right now, Samsung and SK Hynix. And that removes the one scenario that could have helped Apple hold the line on pricing, adding a lower-cost alternative supplier in time for this year's Pro models. And this is where the price hike conversation gets serious. With CXMT effectively sidelined for the iPhone 18 Pro generation, Apple loses a potential lever in negotiations. When you can credibly shift large orders to another supplier, you gain pricing power. When you can't, you're more exposed to the market price of DRAM. And the market is not friendly right now, because the real enemy here isn't just Apple's suppliers. It's global demand. A growing share of DRAM that used to be allocated to consumer electronics is being pulled toward AI, infrastructure, data centers, enterprise compute, and high-performance workloads. And those buyers often pay more. When AI demand spikes, component pricing pressure rises everywhere else, including smartphones. So even if you're not buying a server or building an AI cluster, you can still end up paying the AI tax when you upgrade your phone. That's why this leak matters beyond Apple. If you're thinking, fine, I'll just switch to Samsung, here's the uncomfortable part. Samsung phones aren't immune either. Higher-tier Galaxy models have already seen pricing pressure on larger storage configurations, and the same memory market dynamics apply across the industry. Apple and Samsung might compete in the smartphone market, but they both buy from the same global supply chain reality, where memory availability and pricing are increasingly shaped by AI data center demand. So when people ask, will the iPhone 18 Pro get more expensive? The leak is basically saying, the underlying conditions that cause a price hike are still here, and the supply chain move that could have softened the blow isn't ready in time. That's why some estimates are now floating a possible iPhone 18 Pro starting price as high as $1,399 in the US. Depending on region, taxes, and storage tiers, the real-world jump could feel even bigger. And once Apple is committed to this WMCM path for the Pro line, avoiding higher costs gets harder because the packaging shift narrows the short-term supplier pool and increases the complexity of each unit. Now, to be clear, Apple is still trying to diversify. The leak suggests Apple has been pushing to add CXMT and also YMTC into its broader supply chain mix. But this is where the story gets misunderstood. Diversification doesn't automatically mean cheaper iPhones. A lot of the time, diversification is about security of supply. It's about ensuring Apple can actually get enough memory chips to hit shipment targets when the market tightens. When DRAM is being consumed by AI data centers at record levels, having more potential suppliers isn't a discount strategy, it's a survival strategy. It's Apple making sure we can build the phones we plan to sell, not we can make them cheaper for everyone. And that distinction matters, because it sets expectations. If you're holding out hope that Chinese-made memory equals lower iPhone prices, this leak suggests the iPhone 18 Pro isn't the model where that hope pays off, but there may be a different iPhone where it does. According to the same reporting, the standard iPhone 18 may have a better chance of benefiting from CXMT because it's not expected to arrive until spring 2027. That extra time is everything. A spring launch gives CXMT roughly another year of runway to pass validation, prove reliability, and scale production to Apple-level volume. And there's another advantage. The base iPhone models are expected to stick with the older, more established packaging approach that the Pro line is moving away from. If the base iPhone 18 stays on the more familiar package-on-package style, that's an easier entry point for a new supplier than jumping straight into Apple's first WMCM iPhone Pro architecture. So, if you're looking for the timeline where CXMT could realistically appear inside a global iPhone, the leak suggests it's far more likely to happen in the non-Pro iPhone 18 models in 7, not the iPhone 18 Pro in September 2026. And that also explains why the iPhone 18 Pro situation feels so locked in. Apple can't redesign the packaging strategy at the last minute. It can't gamble on partially validated memory. And it can't delay a flagship iPhone Pro launch just to onboard a new DRAM supplier. The schedule is the schedule. Once Apple commits, it commits. Now here's a point a lot of people forget. Apple kept the iPhone 17 Pro starting price steady last year, even as memory costs were already trending upward. That tells you Apple can absorb pressure when it wants to, at least temporarily, through margin management, supply agreements, or internal cost trade-offs. But the combination of rising DRAM pressure plus a packaging shift that reduces supplier flexibility makes repeating that price restraint much harder this cycle. In other words, even if Apple wants to hold the iPhone 18 Pro line on price, it has fewer tools to do it with. So what should buyers do with this leak? If you're planning to upgrade to the iPhone 18 Pro or iPhone 18 Pro Max this September, mentally prepare for higher pricing, especially if you typically buy higher storage tiers. Memory pricing tends to hit those configurations hardest, and manufacturers often use storage tier pricing as the easiest place to pass on cost increases. If you don't need the Pro features, it may be worth watching what happens with the standard iPhone 18 next spring. Not because it's guaranteed to be cheaper, but because it has a better chance to benefit from Apple's supplier expansion strategy and may be less affected by the WMCM transition. And if you're a Galaxy buyer hoping this is an Apple-only issue, don't get too comfortable. The same memory market that pressures Apple also pressures Samsung, Google, and everyone else building flagship phones with high-performance DRAM. AI demand isn't slowing down, and that's reshaping component pricing across the board.